Welcome everyone to this Force Friday. Today we are going to revisit perspective, right? Such a darn important subject that I'm sure many of you have challenges around, psychological issues, hand drawing issues. But it's the inevitable, right? Like we need to confront perspective and understand it and learn to love it because it is a damn powerful drawing tool that you really can't draw well without. Even if you don't go into drawing environments and backgrounds and so on, you still really need to understand perspective to just draw characters and people. Forget about like storyboarding and comic books, concept art and illustration, right? You just need to know perspective. So, ironically for me, some of you may know this already. I mean, I took some perspective in high school because I was doing mechanical drawing and architecture. So I had some like understanding of it. But through college, when I wanted to go into comics, I really started to suffer from my gaps in understanding and had to dig deeper into it to truly understand it. In fact, I finally just unpacked boxes for my office and been getting my books out. And I came across some old sketchbooks and I was looking through them last night thinking, man, I wish somebody had just come over to me and told me like you need more form in these drawings and more structure because things were like moving all over the place, but I was not getting the right sort of like volume and mass. And the understanding of that again comes, I think, from the understanding of perspective and knowing how to do it relatively well. No, I'm not saying, I'm not saying you need to learn perspective to the point where you're going to become an engineer, or an architect. It's not like it has to go that far. But I think it helps to understand some simple tricks. And that's what we're going to share with you today. Each one of us, Swanley Matunjay and I, we're going to each share with you a trick about perspective, especially trying to get people in perspective. I think that's one of the biggest challenges is, normally when you're creating concept art or illustration, again, comics, boards, there's going to be people in these shots, right? And how do you get them in there? How do you get them in there in a way that that works, right? And that you can do pretty quickly without thinking, oh my God, I've got to try to get perspective in here. And without having to go to a 3D program, not like I have anything against them. I think they definitely now hold a really valuable space in art creation. But in a way that's super fast, I think the faster you could do it, the more efficient, the easier, the better, right? And that's what we want to try to help you with today. So without further ado, let's just say hello to our other Force instructors. How you doing today, Mrityunjay?
I'm doing good. Just ready, pretty much ready to draw people in perspective.
Awesome. And
Yeah,
you swan?
it's
Excuse
always
me?
been like, it's always been like tough, for people. But yeah, we'll just sharing tricks with you, and you'll see how easy it is, if you follow like all these rules.
Yeah. How are you doing, Swanley?
Yeah, good. Excited for this as well. Like, yeah, brings you back to the industrial design days, like those hearts, perspective drawing drills. So yeah, it's fun. Like perspective is pretty black and white. You learn the rules, you apply them, and it works. And if you don't, it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
There's no gray area actually.
Yeah, I think that's why artists have a problem with it because artists are very gray. I think as a community, we don't like numbers typically. Most artists aren't into the math and the accuracy of it's right or it's wrong. It's black and it's white. And that also adds a sort of psychological stigma to it. And I think you said it exactly on nail on the head. It's like what's great about it, the comfort of it is it's either it's working or it's not working. Once you get really good at it, there are ways of cheating and skewing and manipulating things, pushing them. And like I said, we're covering 3 tricks today. There's lots of stuff to be able to play with within the world of perspective. And controlling it, once you understand the rules, then you take advantage of learning those rules and having the ability to play within those rules. I was just thinking of Robert Valley, for instance, which is one of my favorite artists, and he skews depth all the time. So you learn from perspective that things get smaller, right, as they go further away, and they get larger as they come closer to you. And that you can actually bring that into even drawing somebody's face with having a bigger eye and a smaller eye to convey perspective, right? So you're doing that all the way from a block, a street block with smaller buildings further away and bigger ones close up, all the way to taking that same context and bringing it down to the face and the width of the face, right? So you, like I said, you learn stuff. You learn how the rules of perspective actually work, and then take that and control it yourself and use it in like a shorthand kind of way. And like I said, we're going to show you, what we're going to show you today is how do we get people in perspective, 3 tricks to doing that. That are all pretty simple and pretty quickly, quick. And will allow you to, like I said, position numerous characters in these scenes, So why don't we get to it? Swenley, Swenley's up first, so it's all yours when you're ready.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's go to the screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So we're going to start with the first trick, which is the extension method. And I would say before we delve into that, the things that we're going to share with you here, we assume that you at least know the basics of perspective. And if you don't, we encourage you to go and learn that stuff, learn how to set up a simple 2-point, 3-point, 4-point grids, how to fill it with the boxes and how to make sure everything converges towards the right vanishing points. This is the basics of it all. And it's not as hard. Like we said at the beginning, learn the rules, you apply them, and it works. Because again, the tricks we're going to show, they do require at least a basic understanding of perspective in order for them to work. And I would say especially what I'm going to share with you guys here. So the extension method, how does it work? I'm going to just show you guys from some very simple and crude perspective grids how this works. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you how I applied it to some illustration work that I did in the past. So let me open the layer here. So the extension method, actually for me, it's as simple as projecting a stick on different places in a perspective grid. So let's say we have this stick right here, which is A, which represents could be anything. We're talking about people, but this could be a chair, it could be a car. This is like just a measurement. So let's say this is a person. Let me see, I'm on the right layer. Yeah. So let's say that we have a person standing here, and let's say that we're going to like moving along like on a chessboard. As you can see, I have the horizon line, and this is a 2-point grid. So let's say I want to move this guy from point A where he's standing, and I want to move it here to point B. Well, all I have to do is I can use my perspective guidelines, so I already have this one on the floor right here. And I'm going to take it here and go towards the vanishing point. And by the way, I'm using the perspective ruler in Clip Studio Paint, so it automatically snaps my lines to the grids, so makes this pretty easy and fast. So this would be the height of the figure at that point. And now let's say we want to move this guy from, let's call this point B. And let's say we want to move him over here, for example. So again, I can use the perspective guidelines, and here it is. This is the height of the character, and let's call this point C. So it's as simple as this, and it can get even simpler. Now I'm moving him like exactly across the perspective guidelines, but it could be in any place, so let me get rid of this. So let's say I want to place him in a random spot in perspective. Let's say I want to place the character, let's say right here. So what I can do, I can connect the bottom of the stick right here through that point. And I have to make sure that I hit the horizon. And what I'm basically doing is I'm giving this stick like its own vanishing points on the horizon. So I connected the bottom, now I can connect the top. So this gives me 2 guidelines from this stick right here all the way to the horizon line. And all I have to do now, here's the height of the character. So we could draw that character like right here, and that would give us the exact same height as if a character of the same, that is a stall, was standing in point A. So you could do that in any place. Let's say I want to get this guy all the way over here. So I could do the same, all I have to do is like extend the guideline to the horizon, here's the vanishing points. I can connect them over here. So that means that this character is going to be about this high, standing in that spot. So yeah, it's as simple as projecting a stick across the perspective grid. And this could be a character, it could be a car, it could be a building, a piece of furniture, whatever you want. Pretty abstract. It's just about the heights of the object, and using the perspective grid to make sure that you get the right amount of foreshortening as the object is moving farther away or coming closer to us. So the next question would be, well, what if we have figures of different heights, right? So let's say that we have maybe an adult standing here, and then we have maybe a kid standing here. Well, basically the same. So if we just use the grid again, and let's say we're going to move them, let's say over here. So I'm drawing my guidelines. So let's say the adult is standing here. Now I can see that the kid is about half the size of the adult, so even without like having to go through the construction, I could use construction lines or guidelines to bring that over here. But if I know it's half the size and I want to put it here, here, like Mike said at the beginning, here we can start taking some freedom. So I can just eyeball it, and this would be accurate enough. You don't have to take your ruler all the time to like make sure that everything is super precise, unless the drawing requires it to, you can just eyeball it, and it has to be good enough to work with the image, and let's see. So that's figure of different heights. And another one would be, what if the figures are standing on different levels in the picture? Go to a new layer. So same here. So we're starting with the stick at point A. And let's say, let me change colors here. Let's say we project that stick here. So it's pretty close to that box. So I can extend the guideline from the top. Let's be a bit more. I can extend the guideline here. So once we reach that point, so the figure is almost as high as the box, when it's at this spot in space. And next I would want to know, I placed the dot here at B, but where exactly am I in 3D space? Let me grab another color here to make this a bit clearer. Let's see, do we see this? It's kind of light. So this spot here, I want to know where is it in 3D space. So I'm drawing a guideline across this box, and now I'm on the edge, So this is the spot in 3D space. If I draw through on that farther plane of the box, I know that's here. So I can bring the, grab this color again. So I can project the figure further. So now I'm here. Now this is the height. So now I can move this up, and let's say the base is right here, and I can just estimate like the length that would be about this high, and then I can bring that over here. So again, this like the more accurate construction for it. Once you get good at it, you can start just eyeballing this stuff. And again, it just has to be good enough to work with the image. So I would say if you're up for the challenge, take a screenshot of this scene and then bring this figure here from points A to point C, and figure out how how tall is the figure going to be there. So that's it for figure of the from different or on different levels. So let's see, how does this apply to an actual scene? This is an old illustration I did, I think, for a client in around maybe 2015. So let's see here. So here's where I use the extension method to get the height of the different figures. So there's a 2-point scene. I just plotted out like a 1-point grid really quickly because I only need this points right here when everything is converging. And compositionally, it also focuses the eyes on these guys standing in the shadows, which was the intention of the image. So here's my horizon. That's the vanishing points, right on the page. Here are my guidelines, going to this girl that is nearest to us. And here is the extended heights of the girl, and if you notice, I put it a bit higher than she actually is. Like, she's about this tall, but I wanted these guys to be slightly taller, so I use this as my measuring stick, and then I projected that to these different spots. And from here, I could go and get the correct heights for these characters, so that everything looks correctly in perspective. Now here I started to eyeball it more, so I started with these two characters, so again, I just view them as like these measuring sticks, so I know that this character is standing right here and she's about this high. Now I can start, eyeballing and visualizing the perspective guidelines and say, okay, I know this guy's torso is going to be from the bottom of the torso to the top of the head. It's going to be around this high. I can project it here, and I can eyeball this one as well, and especially since not all the figures are, I don't want every figure to be like exactly the same height. I want a bit of variety, so then again, you can just eyeball it, and just has to be good enough to create the illusion of correct perspective. So here is another example. So for this one, I would say, since this one has the horizon on the page, it will be, you could use one of the techniques that Mrityunjay is going to cover, because we have the horizon right here. So you could use what he's going to share with you. But from what I remember, I actually used the extension method. I started with these two characters. They're pretty close to each other in space, so I didn't even have to measure. I just drew the torsos, and then I said, okay, so if this character is their torso is about this high, I knew that I wanted this character to be like here in the composition. So I could just eyeball it, and say, okay, the character is going to be about this high. And same here, I just need one of the characters. Then I can use the bottom of from the bottom of the torso to the head. It's like a measuring stick, then I can project that here. And this character is slightly taller, so she would be around this tall. And then I can bring her here as well. And of course I had the perspective grid, so it makes it a bit easier to like see the space that I'm dealing with, and then I can project it here. And that gave me like the approximate heights of the characters. And, I ended up with a scene that works. So that's it for me for the extension method. Hopefully this helps you guys out. Were there any questions, Mike?
No, we got some comments on liking the style of your illustrations here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to, can you go back to the initial grid? There's just one thing that you kind of said, but I want to make a really clear point about making sure that the audience recognizes this.
This
This one. Yeah. So Swenley touched upon this, but I want to make it clear to you guys what Swenley did here is he did two different things. One thing that he did was he used the grid, for the size, right? Like, if you put somebody over here, they're still using that purple grid that you see in the background, that gives us the height. And then over here, he went, number two is, I guess you could say off the grid, right? Right, it's like you're creating your own grid, right? And what he was saying here is, you want to put somebody here, they're on the same ground plane, but they are not within the extension line grid that's set up here because you're creating a new vanishing point. The reason I bring this up, and the reason it could be very important, is the grid. Another way of looking at this is you can consider like the grid creates the scene, right? It's like the scene's grid. And then this could be the people grid, right? So there could be two different things going on attached to the same horizon line. One is the scene, one are the people in the scene, and they're using different vanishing points attached to the same horizon line. And once that happens, what you do have to be careful about is measuring the people in the space relative to something in the scene, like a doorway. A doorway is always a favorite of mine because you know that doors are like 7.5 to 8 feet tall. So, you might want to start your measuring there to figure out how people are set up, right? You might draw your scene and say, okay, I need to populate the scene with people. Maybe I should draw a person by that doorway. That'll give me their height, right? So let's say, I don't know, let's say there's a door over here, right? Like this. And it's like, okay, and I know that equals, 8 feet. I might start with drawing people there and say, well, I want a person that's about this height. Now I could start, that's my starting point, right? Because I've already drawn the scene and that door is part of the scene. Then I could say, well, I want somebody here. What does that look like, right? Maybe they're in the house. Maybe it's like somebody could see through this house, or maybe they're out in the street. Now I connect this and do this and say, okay, that next person is this tall back there. And I know that their measurement works with the measurement of the scene, right? So it's very easy to get that wrong. That's one of the most common mistakes I see made, is the separation between the people and the scene, and you're trying to get people in the scene. Last but not least, one of the assignments we do in mentorship with this is we'll all have students grab photographs of scenes, right, from Google search, and try to draw people in those scenes. And it's exactly doing what we're talking about here, right? It's like, okay, well, you have a background. How do you draw people into that background, right? It's one thing to be able to draw backgrounds. It's another thing to draw people. How do you bring the two things together? And then bonus points to go into that big scene that you have with people drawn into it, and then try to compose shots out of that. Like, where are the best shots within even that image, right? So like I said, I have some storyboard artists where I have them go that extra step because we're thinking about composition and it's kind of like being a location scout, right? You go to a location, you're kind of walking around with your fingers, like this, saying like, oh, where is the shot? Like, where's the good compositions in this place? We like this location, but where does the camera need to be? Where are the interesting shots relative to the story, right? So kind of a similar idea. So in closing, right, everything that Swenley said, and I just want you to be aware of the scene versus person separation, and that you're trying to bring those two things together. Very easy to screw that up, all right? And again, feel free to ask any questions if you have any. Diminishing can be tracked by extending the lines. If you go into or out of space, extend the lines. Think of the plane created by the two lines. Yeah, Oh, I see. Counterpasta said, when moving something up in space, it is also getting further away. How do you track that diminishing? I'm sure the answer has to do with vanishing points, but I can't. Yeah, I know. There's this way, I always end up forgetting how to do this. It's like you go like this, you have to find the center, right? And then I think you go through, you go from like the center here or to the center here or something like that, right? You keep getting diminishing returns, right? It's like this.
Yeah.
You see, right? Is that right, Swanley, right?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning that it's important to understand the basic perspective rules, you know, because these tricks makes it easy to figure this stuff out, you know?
Yeah. So in short, what I did again is it's like you have a line. It doesn't matter if it's above or below the horizon line, but here's a line up and down. Here, let's make one really low. Oh, let me start up. We'll start over again. Clear all drawing. Okay. So what you do in that case, you have a horizon line. Let's go down here, right? So I've got these two extension lines, and I want to find the middle, right, of a space. Let's say I want that first plane to be that wide. I just exit, which gives me the middle, and then I can run the middle through to the vanishing point. Once I have that, right, then I can also find this middle, and I go from this middle through the middle of that line and bring it down, right? And that keeps giving me like the halves, right? So this would be another hole if I wanted it to be a hole, right? I did two of them. I did it twice. And then I can go to another one, right? You see, and that brings me here. That point down there tells me where to go vertical, and you keep doing that. And that's how you get the accuracy of the diminishing returns to the perspective point, right? So good question. Okay, let's move on to Mrityunjay. You are up and running.
Yep. All right, guys. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
All right. So the second trick of the day. It's gonna be drum rolls and where it is. It is right there. Okay, the hanging method. Now, yeah, it might seem dangerous. You know, oh my God, you know, gonna hang people. What? It's gonna be this, or it's gonna be something like that. No, not at all. Right.
Right.
What you're gonna be doing.
Not that kind of hanging.
Kind of hanging, especially for sure, the second one.
Yeah.
Something like this, you know. But we just taking like a metaphor, okay, like of hanging, you know, from like a rope, and that rope is gonna be our horizon level, okay. Something like this, you know, and you will know like why I bring this one. Especially, you know, so what do you have? I'm gonna draw it for you. The trick that I'm gonna share with you is more for medium to close shot, right? Close to medium shot, okay. What Swenley shared is the extension method. You want to extend basically the lines to horizon, and then you can have like you can basically track the whole body, you know, from the head to the toe. My trick, you know, this hanging method is gonna be for close to medium range. Okay. What does it mean? You know, close to medium range is more like, oh, you really see the people right on the face, you know, in the shot. So let's say I have someone, you know, standing right there. Let's say something like this. This is my horizon level, you know, at the back for sure. High level right there, like a cool little eye. Yeah, so let's say we have a face right there, and let's say the horizon level is touching, you know, see the eyebrows, you know, somewhere here. It's gonna be the eyebrows, nose, the face, the mouth, you know, like this. Now, if you want to draw like the same, let this person with the same height and further back, right? What do you do? Or maybe closer, okay, or further back. What do you basically do? You take the same face, right? Because you take the same face like this, and then you shift it further back, okay? But now that line, right? It's gonna be on the eyebrow of that person, okay, like here. Basically, what I'm saying is the line touches what it's touching, right? No matter what, right? It's always gonna be touching the same thing. Let's say for this person's eyebrows, so for this person, it's still gonna be eyebrows if it's the same height, okay? So start from here, like, and try to understand, starting to understand this trick from this thing, like very simple, that whatever line touches, it touches, like no matter what, like how far the person is. Now, you can also have a face right there at the back. They can see like it's very far the back. but it's going to be touching the same thing, right? Which is the eyebrows of the person. But the thing is, I'm not going to cover that because once we start to like take a person like too far away, then you're going to be having the extension method, be really used. So again, as I said, this like medium to close shot is the close to medium shot is like what you're going to have. Let's say I have a person right here, like very close up front, and it's touching the same thing, right? The eyebrows in here. So nose is going to be here, mouth in here. So this is for the person with same heights, like this way. You can change the height, okay? You can change the height of this. So let's say I have another shot right here. What do? Again, let's take the horizon. You can take the eye level wherever you want. Okay, so for example, now it is up here. It doesn't have to be in the middle. It could be up there. It could be lower down. Now, for example, let's take a face, right? Now, where the eye level is touching, let's say the hairline. Okay, this is an example. So here's the eyebrows, nose, and like this. Let's say that touching the hairline. This person. So now what? You want to make a person with a smaller height. What do? Right? You basically do something like this. Okay. Now say like the face, it's maybe like touching the top of the head. Okay. So now this person would be a smaller height because it's not actually touching the hairline. Okay. Now let's say you want to draw a taller person. What do? Yeah, let's say now let's say the bottom of the nose is touching the horizon line, right? So this person would be a tall person now because they're touching like the tip of the nose here. So this is how you go, right? First start with the normal, normal thing. It's like, oh, I'm gonna just understand this trick by drawing the same person, like, sorry, the same height, okay? So anywhere, so let's say right here. And then start to draw faces, up close, like medium close, and just try to touch the same thing, right? It's like super easy. And then start to differentiate between the heights, make someone lower down, make someone touch the nose while the other is having like their chin touch, okay, things like that. Now once this is out of the way, now we can yeah, so this is the trick. Basically this is the trick. And I can have other things in there. So for example, it works for everything, right? Let's say it's a ball, right? And works on any eye level as well. Okay, so for example, the eye level is super high right here, and you have I'll just for the teaching purpose, I would take the eye level here, right? Let's say you have a ball, right? So ball is, let's say, touching the middle of it. You can not have another ball like here. Yeah, I know this is out of scene. Yeah, so just like bringing the ball like close to the camera now. Okay. But see, that's also like touching. So you say like, whoa, now that's kind of starts to happen. Now this will again, plug into the extension method that Sonli gonna use, but Sonli like taught you, but this is how it works. Okay, so you have another like big ball, whatever. If it's the same like size and everything, right? Still like touching the middle of it. Okay, this is how it works. You can have chairs in there. You can have, let's say, cars. Okay, you can have people feet. Okay, so you can like really play with like these kind of things. So for example, the eye level is right up there. You could have like ankles, let's say. Okay. Let's say I have something like this. And now I want to show like in a person's ankle, which is like in the front, like close to the camera, I would have this, right? Maybe something like that.
Yeah, I got to say that hanging, I think hanging is probably one of the most profound. It's like it takes the concepts of perspective. Some of you were talking about tricks and all earlier. And it's a trick, right? Like you're not drawing extension lines and vanishing points, but this is a shortcutted rule to how the grid actually works, which is when you're looking at a scene, that horizon line is really your eye line relative to the horizon, and everything at your height, your eye height is going to cut through like a laser beam through whatever is at that height. So it doesn't matter if you're laying down on the ground and looking at people's ankles like Mrityunjay drew here, you're going to see ankles then all the way across other people's feet. And they'll vary, of course, a little bit. The shoe height might vary, or they're in high heels or whatever. But in general, you know, your view is like a widespread laser at that height, you know, cutting all the way to the horizon, right? It's your vision compared to the horizon. So just really powerful, and it's scale, as we were saying before, like with Robert Valley, scale creates depth, right? So as long as you lock everything down to that, you're going to get it right? It's going to look right. As soon as you get too far away, you get more like full figures, then you're encroaching on Swenley's space of extension line, and you might as well measure, because extension is the most accurate one. This one really is you cropping in close, as Mrityunjay said, it's more for medium and close shots. Extension is mostly for far shots, right? Full figure shots. And they can be used in, you know, in combination as well. Don't think like, oh, I'm drawing, sorry, I got distracted by the toes. I'm drawing, you know, I'm drawing with hanging, you know, I can't use extension. Well, that's not true. You know, you can bring extension in here to check yourself. You know, it's totally fine. In fact, they're great checkers for one another. In fact, if you think about what Swenley did, hanging is a great way to check your extension work, because in the extension work, if it's being done right, then let's say the horizon's going through people's chests, that means the extension is being done well, right? You might do all this extension work and find all these people standing, and then just kind of look at, are all their bodies touching the line in the same place? Yeah, they are. Okay, that's great. That means the grid is working, right? The extension is working because the hanging is working, right? So hanging is a great way to check extension. And if you need to get people in hanging shots where you have more full figures, then add some extension work into it, right? So you can flip-flop between these two tools very easily, right?
Thanks for the insights, Mike.
Yes, of course.
All right, so now we can just like use this technique, you know, and maybe try to combine Swenley's, you know, trick within it. What I'm gonna do is just like, I took this blank scene with no people, and let's try to like place some people in it, you know, and let's see if it looks believable or not. It is gonna look believable, but let's see. So let's say here's my eye level, you know, really quick. Not that, maybe somewhere here, right? Yeah, that's gonna be good. Now, yeah, we just wanna start. Let's say the people are up close, you know, to the camera, and then also like going back, you know. So here you wanna use the hanging method, right? And you wanna also use the extension method as like the people like goes back. So basically, filling this scene, you know, with people. So let's say again, you know, so we start with the hanging method. So let's say again, yeah, you have face like this, and see touching eyebrow. You can take whatever, you know, it's just like take whatever part that you like, okay? Obviously depending upon your scene. Then just try to like touch that same part across like people if you want to draw with the same height, okay? And you can just change it, you know, a little bit so to make it more natural looking. It's just that this is for your checking, right? Just like as Mike mentioned. Again, I'm just gonna take the same example of an eyebrow, right? It's gonna be, let's say, the nose and the mouth here, right? It's like, oh, here's a person, right? You want to draw with a different height person, let's say on the same level. You know what you would do is just like, oh, take the same maybe a face length and then try to put it right here, whatever. Obviously, this person is smaller but same level, so he's gonna be having a smaller face, you know, according to his height, something like this. You know. Yeah. So now these are like two different height people. I want to draw this person, like the height of this person, but on separate layers, like in the depth. You would let's say have a face there, okay, touching the eyebrows again, nose and mouth. You know. And now as it's like going back, let's say I have face here, right, touching the eyebrows. Now see, like we are getting into the full body shots. Okay, and have something like this, getting into full body shots right. So now the extension method would start to work here. Okay. So yeah, this is how it goes, you know. Just first of all, decide. I would say first of all, decide if you wanna have like the people like really close up in your camera, like with a close shot. If you wanna draw that, then just use the hanging method, and then as it's like goes away, then use Swenley's method, you know, and then try to combine both. It's gonna be like this, you know. This person, let's say right here. this is how it goes. And you will start to see like, oh, you're now getting like people in there. I want to start, let's say you want to use the extension method or something. So that we have another person standing right there. See, that's how it goes. Okay. All right, so that's it. That's it for the trick. I try to keep it as simple as possible. Just in conclusion again, let's try to touch like one person with something. Let's say eyebrow, nose, chest, whatever that you want to have, ankle, right, whatever. And it also includes staying, everything, and everyone. And then try to touch that same part if you want to draw the person the same height across the whole scene. Okay, and you want to change it, just change the height, right, according to what part is touching. All right, that's it. So I'll hand it over to Mike for the last trick, and hope you enjoyed.
Thank you, Mrityunjay.
Yeah, very welcome.
All right, guys, so what have we covered? We've covered extension lines, right? Which I think, again, is the most accurate, right? We've got real height. We talked about in extension line that you've got scene perspective and people perspective. Then Mrityunjay discussed hanging, right? And the reason it's called hanging because everything is attached to that line. It's hanging off the line in the same area of whatever the thing is. It could be parts of the face. It could be the chest, the feet. It doesn't even have to be a person. It could be a chair or a car, right? But the point is, once you touch something, that same thing will be touched in the same place, right? Will be connected to the horizon line in the same location, no matter how far back it goes. That's saying that everything's on a level playing field. Someday, maybe we'll talk about hills and valleys and all that other fun stuff, but for now, flat plane, right? So I'm gonna bring in the last trick here. I would say this is probably the most limited one, which is why we're putting it last. Let's just put this at 100%. So here's a frame. And this is also for medium to close-ups, right, to see you. And this is called ratios, which I think I wrote, but it's like way up here. There. So what does that mean? Well, let's step back for a quick second. The idea of ratios or proportion is how perspective really works, right? Like someone was saying earlier, it's like one thing is to use the grid and it's another to draw perspective without the grid, right? And then things start to fall apart. So no matter what you're learning, if it's perspective or figure drawing or whatever, with experience, you start recognizing, or hopefully you start recognizing that what the patterns of things are that you've acquired recognition of by doing it over and over again. If you think about perspective is really this idea. There's two main things in perspective to be aware of. One is this horizon line and how controlling it actually is. So this is like number one. Number two is that you're really most of the time dealing with triangles, right? And how these triangles end up getting to that vanishing point. Doesn't matter how the triangle is set up, right? It's like this. And that triangle, no matter how wide it is, how wide it is or how narrow it is making a height, a distance, get smaller and smaller at a certain rate of speed, right? Based on how far it is from the horizon line, right? At a certain rate of speed, you're shrinking things down. So, and this also was kind of mentioned earlier as kind of a shortcut to be aware of, is if this is your horizon line, like I said, it's kind of like recognizing that that's the horizon relative to you, and where you are and you're standing. And it's like, oh, that's the horizon line, right? So this is how I'm seeing right now. You could be up here and like seeing the horizon line, okay? So it's really about like the curvature of the earth compared to you and where you're standing. And no matter what, like I said, when you look out at your height and you find that horizon line, everything that touches from your laser beam eye to that line is always going to be touching in the same place. Now, to get back to the ratio thing I was trying to say, what I was trying to say is that things are bigger the further they are away from the horizon, and they get smaller as they get to it, right? So here it gets smaller and gets bigger. On the bottom, you can think about when you're driving, right? Like cars are bigger over here and they get smaller as they get to the horizon. If you think about up here, Could be an airplane, right? It's really small when it's far away and it's much bigger as it's closer, right? Because the horizon, again, relative to your eye, it is the furthest point on the edge of the planet, basically, that you can see. Even if you have to look through things, like I'm staring at the other wall of my office here, I can't see the horizon line. I just have to know if I'm standing level like this and I look out straight, my eye is going to laser beam cut through everything until I get to that edge, right? So I give you all this backstory because this trick called ratios is kind of weird. It's like a very oversimplified version of what I just described here, with things small to big as they move closer and further away from the horizon, all right? So if I put the horizon line, the ratios, all by the way, is about the horizon line, HL, out of frame. So Swenley's trick and Mrityunjay's, for the most part, work best when the horizon is in the frame, especially hanging, right? Hanging doesn't work unless it's in the frame. You need the horizon to hang on, right? You could use extension, Swenley's piece, and ratio together, and we'll talk about that as well here. Let's just get to it. So ratio works when the horizon line is typically out of the shot, right? So let's just say I put it here, and I want to draw a bunch of people maybe walking by. There's like a protest or a parade or whatever walking by, and I have the camera low, right? Notice my eye line is below the viewer, my like vision, right? It's down here. So what does that mean from a head standpoint? It's like my eye is actually here, right? Here's my eye with the horizon line. Here's my nose, right? But I've decided to look up. So now I'm looking up. The horizon's still there. It's just outside of my viewpoint, right? So the frame is right there, you see, versus the frame being here where the horizon line is in the frame. So I put it out of the frame. I brought the eye line down. So when I look up now and I want to draw these heads, I use these ratios, right? So I'm going to use a 1-to-1 ratio today just to make it really simple and say, you know what? I want one head that's going to kind of be up there. So I say it's going to be that tall. That equals, this is one head height. Now I do that again and say, okay, well, that's about the head. So here's a head. Now I'm going to keep using that consistency to help me draw these other heads. So maybe I want another head that's going to land here somewhere. I just want to try to get it right. So I do the ratio thing again. And I say, okay, I want this head to be there, which means if I double that, it's about right there. So this head height's going to be about here. And then I want another head that's like, let's say over here, right? So smaller, right? And that height's about like that. So there it is, right? So crazy, right? Like all I did was measure up a certain height and then said, I'm going to duplicate this 1-to-1, say that's the head. So the further the distance, right? The further I go up, the bigger obviously the object gets, because this right here, this height is the measurement, right? So the longer I make that measurement, the bigger the object becomes because it's getting pushed further away from the horizon line, right? So clever, right? Such a clever, easy shortcut to drawing shots like this when the horizon's out of the scene. Now I could add a little bit of Swenley to this with extension and say, well, maybe I want to, now that I've got the heights, right, and I've got the sizes right, those ratios right, I want to add maybe some perspective to these people. I can give myself a vanishing point, let's say here, and maybe another one down here, and go like this, right, across these people. And then that, I can get their faces in there, right, their heads. I can get buildings and stuff. If they're lined, let's say they're on a street and they're lined up with the street, right, I can create a whole scene out of this now, right? So now I can say, okay, there's the extension line, right? I can block out people's faces in here now, right? Say their shoulders are here, right? And they're walking like this. See how quickly this really starts to come together. This person would be behind there because they're smaller. All right, so smaller is behind, bigger is closer to me, right? So there it is, right? All I did was use ratios that pushed me from underneath the frame up into the frame using these ratios of measuring heads. Again, it could be chairs, cars, tires, trees, plants, bugs, whatever I want. And that pushing away gives me the height differences I need to invoke perspective. And then if I want to, I can use extension to get more information in there. I can go even further and create the scene. In this case, I'm using the same points to create the scene as I am the people, right? So I could have, I don't know, an apartment building up back here and there's windows, right? I could add 3 points if I wanted to and really push this and start doing this, right? That's another option just to go even further, which means I could even have these guys bend a little bit to that perspective, right? If I do that to the building, I'm adding 3-point perspective in here. It's getting even more dramatic, right? Maybe there's a corner of a street, right? Maybe the edge of the building is like way up here somewhere. You see, got some clouds pointing in here towards the parade. And you can see pretty fast, right? Pretty fast. Here, let's get this up here and then come down. So pretty quickly, right? Pretty fast, we can get a full scene put together. So let's ratio looking up. Let's do a really quick one of ratio looking down, right? Do the same thing. But note here, I really want you to be aware of is the abstract understanding of the further you get away from the line as a measurement, the bigger things get. And that is caused by how extension works, how perspective works. If you're going from wide to narrow, right? You get these triangles of measurement that create proportional change, right? So here's another one. Let's put an angle on this one just to make things a little crazier, right? So now the horizon is on a tilt, right? Still the same thing would happen, right? I could say, well, except I can't do the ratio like this, by the way. I've got to go perpendicular to it, right? So that's a good thing to keep in mind, right? So let's say I want to get down to here. That's about my head height. It's about right there. I say it's right there. Let's do a really big one like right here, right? So that's a pretty far distance. I'd say that head is like here, right? If I do a small one here, right, won't matter. It's not going to be in the shot. Maybe it's worth it for me to get the rest of the person's body in there, right? If I do that, I would start bringing in extension because I want to try to land the feet down on the ground, right? So let's get maybe another one over here. It's a little too similar to the other. Let's bring this down to maybe right there. So I'm looking at this line compared to this line, and I'm like, let me get something in the middle. So it's about right there, right? So I'll put another head in here, right, like so. So there's there's a group of people. Now, again, if I wanted to, they could be of varying perspective points, by the way, because I could be rotating the box in perspective, or like the parade I just drew, I use the same vanishing point. So if I know my perspective well enough, I could say, well, maybe this person's head is turned this way, right? So maybe their face is like here, their nose and their mouth. Maybe I've got one person that's facing us, right? So his point might be right above. So it's going to be like a 1-point perspective and then subtly looking down at the point below. So this person might be looking like this. Right, like that. This person's over here like this. Maybe this person is looking slightly right, like maybe like that, right? So I got to think about what the perspective points for this would be, right? So that's going to take me over here, and then this one will be a little more steep and closer because this is so shallow, right? So, and that's, what's helping me here is my understanding of being able to draw perspective freehand, right? Boxes freehand, right? And then I'm kind of starting there and then building out from there to build the grid out for myself, right? So you can see now we've got 3 people and they're in the same proportion around similar sized heads. So, this could be like 3 gangsters or whatever, leaving their den, right? Getting ready to go rob the bank or whatever, right? Here's 3 guys, right? 3 hoods. You see, and then I have the beginning of my shot. Now, again, if I had this person in there, well, I might build some extension off this. I'd have to really go far out of the shot, by the way. It's like, because I want this height and I want to go from here, like down to how tall is this person? If I want somebody standing here, like, how does that work? Can I get that to work right? It seems like they'd be standing about right there. Right, so I can get more and more crowd back here. I could either follow these 2 original points and go like that, or once I have this first one, I could say I want another person here, right? And then I can follow that back. So this is all the extension work that Swenley did, right? So it's like this, you see? So there's a combination of them pushing the two things together, right? So any questions before I sort of close up today on the thoughts on this? Let's see. Swenley, perspective more difficult in my brain. That's because I suck at math. Stoked with hanging shortcuts. Thank you for doing these streams, guys. You're welcome. Elastic Lucifer. Wow, this is great for interesting camera angles. This looks like a cool exercise. I may have to download the video and put it in my iPad Pro to practice. Yeah, no doubt, you know. So hopefully, you know, what I want you guys to be aware of that the three of us have shared with you today are some really, really powerful tricks to creating shots. What we haven't talked about today, which we will do in the future, is composition. It's like, yeah, but what's a good shot? What's not a good shot? It's one thing for me to sit here and just talk about the perspective and trying to get that all correct. But how do you put that together in a way that creates an interesting shot, right, at the same time? So I have, last but not least, in closing, similar to what Mrityunjay was doing before, I want you to be aware that all these tools, you know, could be used. I could even use proportion here if I wanted to, but it doesn't really make that much sense. So, you know, when you look at a photograph, maybe in closing, what we tell you here is like, how do you find that darn horizon line, right? Like, I know I can look at this and say, you know what, the horizon on this is probably right in here somewhere, right about here. And the reason for that is what? Well, because I look at the overview of the shot and see that this is going down, right? It gets steeper as it goes up, right? And it gets flatter, and flatter as it gets to the horizon, right? The horizon is a straight line. So you notice I see all these angles when I'm looking at the picture. And I noticed when I look at this photo that this was still angling a little bit, the bottom of those windows. But once we got to the staircase, it's ever so slightly angling up. So I knew just by seeing that final change of what's going down, what's going up, that the horizon line is in between those two moments somewhere, right? So if you have a shot where there's no people in it, you're trying to find the place where things go flat, right? That's what you're looking for in the photograph. If there are people in the shot and it looks like it's around the same height, chances are the horizon is going to be right through their heads because somebody else standing there took the picture, right? And it's probably them standing on the ground. Not always, they could be standing on a garbage can or a bucket or whatever, and they could be higher, but you'd start to be able to tell, oh, I'm looking down at these people's heads. Otherwise, it's typically somebody standing across the street at the same eye level, right? So, you know, once we have this and we know the horizon is in here, right, then we could start doing all the other stuff, right? It's like, well, you know, here's a garbage can, right? Like how tall is a person next to that garbage can? I mean, to make this really simple, I could say, well, you know, this person, I want a person of this age to be at this height, right, where they're touching the line, which means if I want to do something really close in the foreground here, I could say, well, I just want to do this as hanging and say, well, somebody standing here would look like this, right? So that's me using hanging in this scene. But if I want to more accurately say somebody is standing here, yeah, you know what? I should probably use extension lines, right? Because now they're out in the middle of the street. I need a standing measurement, a full height measurement. And to Swenley's point, we have a stick here, right? So this person is about right here. You see, so we're using both of those two prior tools. Anyway, in closing here, what I want you to be aware of is ways of finding the horizon line just in looking at a photograph, which is something we do in the mentorship all the time. It's actually a huge part of it is finding perspective in photographs, usually exterior shots, interior shots like rooms and such. And then last but not least, we also use Minecraft because Minecraft is made of boxes, right? Like where else can you get a better sense of what that perspective looks like in that structure, okay? So hopefully this helps you guys. You know, it's really fun to try to take on this particular assignment, which is find photographs like empty street corners like I did here and try to start plugging in people. You can do the same thing for interiors. Try using the tricks that we shared with you today, and hopefully that leads you to starting to draw your own shots, right? Like be aware of the camera be aware of how you could start placing people within those shots and try to figure out what tool is the best tool for the situation that you are drawing in, okay? How do I, Tanner, get used to perspective and getting easier at what? Monitoring it, I guess, if any tips are, well, hopefully this helped you, Redacted. You know, the bottom line is draw a lot of grids. I would say keep practicing grids and using grids and just getting boxes and grids. I would recommend trying to draw freehand boxes out of your imagination and rotating them and getting acclimated to that. And then you finally get here to people, you know, understanding scenes and backgrounds and how people work relative to the perspective, right? All right, guys, thank you everyone for joining today. Have an exciting weekend and week, and we will see you all next Friday. Thank you, Mrityunjay and Swenli, for all of your very clear, educational, and insightful advice today. And we'll see everybody next week. Take care, guys.
Bye.
You guys. Bye-bye.
We'll see you.